So I don't exactly like or trust the Academy Awards. I've been following them for a few years now, and while they usually recognize at least a few of the films I consider some of the best of the year, they also have a long history of ignoring a lot of great films and bolstering a lot of mediocre films. There are presumably a lot of reasons for this: the lack of diversity within the Academy, the power that large studios have as opposed to smaller studios, and the mainstream American film industry's ignorance and condescension of foreign, especially non-Western film industries. But this has led to a lot of studios releasing movies that are clearly trying to garner awards attention, hence the term Oscar bait. These movies are often generic, creatively bankrupt, and lacking in technical flair. Based on a true story movies are very common. Now, not every movie I'm listing here is necessarily Oscar bait. I included a couple that are just popular Oscar movies that I don't like, and there are also plenty of bad Oscar bait movies that I'm not including just because I haven't seen them. Like, I'm sure The Help isn't great. These are just some that I've seen that really personally irk me. So I thought I'd talk about them. Spoilers for all these movies, but I wouldn't really recommend watching them anyways. The Post. The Post is like the cinematic equivalent of plain oatmeal, served with water and a bowl of sand. This movie really raises an important moral question. Steven Spielberg can still direct movies, but should he? The film chronicles the Washington Post's attempts to publish the Pentagon Papers. Don't ask me more about that because honestly I never learned about it in school, and this movie definitely didn't help me understand it any better. Spielberg is clearly trying to take some type of political stance, but it's that obnoxious Oscar bait style of political film that's utterly afraid to take any risks or make anybody mad. The most biting political commentary in the film is a clumsy and embarrassingly unsubtle comparison between Nixon and Trump. We get it. Orange man bad. There's just nothing to get out of this film, nothing to really engage with, no good emotional payoff, no message you haven't heard before. Probably the most noteworthy thing for me comes at the end of the film when they do what is essentially an Avengers-style sequel tease hinting at the discovery of the Watergate scandal. The Post will return in Lady Bird. Okay, I don't hate this one with a passion or anything, and it's not even Oscar bait, I acknowledge that, but I wanted to include it because it was such a big name at the Oscars a few years ago, and I feel so ambivalent about it. Unfortunately, Lady Bird really let me down. No, it's not a bad movie, it's a fine coming-of-age movie, but Best Picture nominee? I found the protagonist of Lady Bird supremely unlikable, and listen, I don't even personally think that every protagonist has to be conventionally likable, there's room for nuance there, but in this case, it felt like the movie really wanted us to like her and root for her, which I found difficult. She seems to have such little regard for the feelings and problems of her family and friends, and her one phone call, thanking her parents at the end of the film was not enough to resolve that issue for me. Yes, characters can be flawed, whatever, but that unlikability doesn't seem like the intention of this particular character. There are things I like about it. Beanie Feldstein is great, and I thought the portrayal of Timothée Chalamet's character, that type of vapid, pretentious boy, was really spot on. It doesn't help that this film was really overhyped. Maybe I would have had a better experience if I'd gone into it with lower expectations. Honestly, it kind of felt like it only made it to the Oscars because the Academy wanted to prove that they could include women, which is sad because there are a lot of better movies directed by women that don't get that attention. A Star is Born. God, this movie is overrated. I want to get through this one fast. This was the third remake of this film, and it shows. It's a very dated story in a lot of ways that the filmmakers made very little effort to update for modern times. It's basically the story of a man manipulating a woman until he commits suicide, which, in the film's logic, is a noble and tragically romantic thing to do. What a great message for a movie, right? The whole thing of, man commits suicide, after which woman sings a heartfelt song complete with warm and fuzzy flashbacks to how epic their love story was, really doesn't sit right with me, for some reason. Also, it's just poorly paced and not very engaging. One thing people like to defend about this movie is its cinematography, and I didn't actually think even that was that great. There are some well-framed shots, but the lighting and coloring are pretty ugly and weird. Also, Bradley Cooper has an incredibly punchable face. Don't at me. A Night at the Garden. So this is kind of a bonus entry because it's not like a fiction feature-length film in the Best Picture category. It's actually an Oscar-nominated documentary short, but I wanted to lump it in here because it's an Oscar-nominated film that I take issue with. So for the last few years, I've really enjoyed going to the Riverview Theater in Minneapolis to see their showing of all the Oscar-nominated documentary shorts. It's a great time. It's always me and like 200 senior citizens crying together. The shorts are sad. That's why we're crying. We're not just crying for no reason. And I've enjoyed almost every single one I've seen, but one that didn't quite sit right with me was Marshall Curry's A Night at the Garden. This is a very short film constituted entirely of archival footage of a Nazi rally that took place in Madison Square Garden in 1939. The point of the film is clearly to draw a comparison to today's political climate, as well as to demonstrate that fascist ideology was and still is alive and well in America. It's not just this far-off foreign concept that could never take root here. Now that's all well and good. I agree with that. The theme of the film is not the problem. My problem with it is actually the technical filmmaking and effort that went into this film. It should be noted that most of the documentary shorts in this category every year are long shorts. They're often 30 to 50 minutes. A Night at the Garden is 7 minutes long. Obviously, I'm not saying that the longer your documentary is, the better, and vice versa, but let's look at A Night at the Garden versus the other nominees. Period, End of Sentence, Black Sheep, Endgame, and Lifeboat are all at least 20 minutes long and feature extensive interview and B-roll footage. They all clearly took at least months to make and really show the power of documentary filmmaking with their creative storytelling, unique and underrepresented subjects, and technical achievement. A Night at the Garden, on the other hand, is 7 minutes of minimally edited archival footage that the filmmaker didn't even shoot. I'm not saying that there's no merit to that type of filmmaking or that it can't be good or meaningful, but it just doesn't really seem fair to put it in the same category as the other films. I'm glad it didn't win. Sorry. Green Book. Best Picture? Best Picture? The year Roma came out? Stop making these movies. Nobody cares about your stupid racist white character that learns to stop being racist from their wise and patient black friend. I see you writing that script. Put it down. Put it down! Bohemian Rhapsody. So, fun fact, this is actually my least favorite movie of all time. So much so that I could do a whole video about it. I could probably write a whole novel about it, several novels about it. Basically, in summary, it's incredibly homophobic, both due to its minimalization of Freddie Mercury's relationship with men and its romanticization of his one relationship with a woman, but also due to its judgmental, conservative, and moralistic perspective on gay sex, gay clubs, and the gay community in general during the AIDS epidemic. On top of all that, it is unrelentingly and pointlessly historically inaccurate, often with the sole purpose of making Mercury seem like a worse person than he actually was. Supposedly the remaining members of Queen actually didn't want it to be a Freddie biopic, so they demanded that more content on the whole band be shoehorned in. But if that's true, that's funny because the film basically gives no personality to the other band members. You could replace them with potted plants, and there would be no great impact on the story. Also, Rami Malek's performance is really bad. It's this weird, effeminate caricature that in no way resembles Mercury at all. All you need to do is watch, one interview with the real Freddie Mercury to see how off it is. Also, the fake teeth are god-awful. In fact, most of the styling is god-awful. All of the characters are so meticulously styled that none of them look like real people. Their hair is too perfect, their clothes don't look lived in, they look like mannequins at the Gap. Also, the writing is garbage. There's no story, and the dialogue is some of the worst I've ever heard.
Freddie, I'm pregnant.
Could you?
Also, the use of music is atrocious. It's not in any way meaningful. There are so many Queen songs they could have used, and tons of them have a lot of meaning that could be used to effectively aid the story, but this movie decided to just use, the 5 most popular Queen songs. Also, the editing looks like it was done by me, in 10 minutes.
I've got to make an impression, darling.
You look like an angry lizard.
It's your best work.
Very subtle.
You're gonna fly away. Can I borrow it for Sunday church?
So this is Queen. And you must be Freddie Mercury. You've got a gift. You all have.
Also, the lighting and camera quality makes it look really fake and weird. Also, there's no meaningful cinematography or visuals. Also, it's not well grounded in any time period or location, despite the incredibly rich context of London in the 1980s. This movie sucks, and I hate it.
Could you?
Harriet. Harriet is on another level of lazy, bland Oscar bait. It feels like a TV movie. There's really just nothing to say about it. It's so boring and devoid of any heart or personality or emotion. There's not much more I can say. Harriet Tubman deserves better. Rocket Man. You better believe I hate this one too. Listen, I went into this movie with good faith. I had heard it was better than Bohemian Rhapsody. I had heard that it didn't fall into the same homophobic traps as Bohemian Rhapsody. Spoiler alert, it isn't, and it does. No, Rocket Man isn't as much of a mess as Bohemian Rhapsody, probably because it didn't go through the same production hell, but I would say it's almost as bad, if not as bad. First of all, the movie is still homophobic. Just because there's a gay sex scene doesn't mean it's not homophobic. Just like Bohemian Rhapsody, Rocket Man spends an uncomfortable amount of time demonizing the gay community of the 1980s. It's so moralistic and judgmental, essentially boiling gay culture down into substance abuse and dangerous, sinful orgies. Additionally, the only relationship Elton John has with another man in the film is, like, horrible and abusive. John's manager, John Reed, who, to my knowledge, in real life is like a fine, normal person who actually remained friends with John up until the 2000s when they had a falling out, they make him this despicable, greedy abuser. I assume they just needed a villain, and John, who had some creative control over the film, probably resents Reed nowadays, but this just made me angry. It's a really disrespectful and minimalistic depiction of a very real person, and just furthers the homophobic agenda of the film, intentional or not. But all that offensive messaging aside, it's also just a stupid, bad movie. It's just as generic as Bohemian Rhapsody, and it's so unbelievably cheesy. Bryce Dallas Howard is definitely the worst offender here. She is absolutely cartoonish in her depiction of a vampy, abusive mother.
Where are you off to?
Don't know. Haven't decided yet. But whatever it is, you're not invited. Of course he has. But you'd know that if you took the slightest bit of interest in me or this family.
For God's sake, I know that. Known for years.
You don't mind?
Frankly, I don't care. But I'd rather you keep that sort of thing to yourself. I just hope you realize you're choosing a life of being alone forever. You'll never be loved properly.
I don't mind a little cheese, okay? I love the Mamma Mia movies, I adore Bollywood, but this is bad cheese. This is like old, moldy, rotten cheese. It has the same styling problem I mentioned Bohemian Rhapsody has, possibly because of some of the creative overlap on the two films. I do appreciate that this film goes for the conventional musical route. Some of the song sequences are pretty good, but overall it's just another generic, uninteresting, poorly written, poorly crafted, offensive biopic. I just want them to stop making these movies. At the very least, I wish the Academy would stop recognizing them. I realize that there's never going to be a perfect award show. These are subjective judgments made by a small group of people that doesn't represent all of film criticism, but people respect the Oscars. They're the most famous film awards in the world. It'd be nice if they focused more on the craft, worked to consider more films by women and minorities, and actually took foreign films seriously. I know it's not going to happen. It'd be nice. If you're looking for better film awards, I think the juries of film festivals tend to be a little more trustworthy. Maybe look into the winners of some of the big ones. I don't know. Every year, as we get more and more Star Wars product placement and keep rewarding stupid garbage movies, I feel like Hollywood's reputation is just getting lower and lower. Anyways, I think I'm gonna go destroy another copy of Bohemian Rhapsody.
I'm a fan of mischief.